There are certain moments in sports where everything changes. Moments where a league that's been overlooked for years suddenly becomes the center of the conversation. And right now, women's basketball is living through something nobody expected, something people now call the WNBA effect. But here's the truth. That phrase barely scratches the surface, because this isn't just a rise in popularity. This isn't just a viral moment. This isn't even just about basketball. This is a cultural movement, a financial shift, a generational awakening, a revolution in real time. The WNBA effect is reshaping how the world sees women's sports on TV, online, in stadiums, in schools, in boardrooms, and even inside homes where people never cared about women's sports until now. And the wildest part? None of this happened by accident. Today, we're diving into exactly what the WNBA effect is, why it exploded now, and what it means for the future of women's sports around the world. And by the end of this video, you'll see this movement isn't a moment. It's the beginning of a new era. Most people think the WNBA effect started in 2024, that the second Caitlin Clark declared for the draft, the entire sports universe suddenly snapped awake and said, hey, this league actually exists. But the seeds were planted long before that. In the early 2020s, the WNBA was already building momentum. It didn't look explosive then, but the foundation was being laid. Superstar personalities like A'ja Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Chelsea Gray, Nafisa Collier, and Sabrina Ionescu were quietly changing the culture. Stadiums weren't always full, but storylines were forming. Rivalries were bubbling. The talent level kept rising. The games were getting better. Production quality improved. Social media started noticing. And then, college basketball began feeding the league with a new wave of megastars. Players with their own fan bases, their own brands, their own media hype. The college world was blowing up. Big rivalries, big personalities, massive TV ratings, passionate fan wars. People were emotionally invested. So when these college stars entered the league, millions of fans followed them. It was like a floodgate opened, not slowly, not gradually, all at once. And when Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, and other young phenoms stepped into the WNBA, the league wasn't just gaining rookies. It was gaining an entire generation of eyeballs. That's when the WNBA effect began to form. This combination of talent, rivalry, personality, hype, and curiosity that turned the league into a phenomenon. But even that was only the start, because after the emotional rise came the financial shockwave that no one predicted. Nothing changes a league faster than money, and the WNBA effect brought money like a storm. Overnight, ticket sales didn't just rise, they detonated. Teams that struggled to fill arenas were suddenly selling out. Resale prices shot up. Fans lined outside hours before tip-off. Entire sections were full of brand new fans. Kids, teenagers, families, people who had never been inside a WNBA arena before. Merchandise? Gone. Sold out in days, sometimes in minutes. Jerseys for rookies sold faster than some NBA teams' merch. Players became marketing machines. Brands that had never touched women's sports suddenly began cutting huge deals because the numbers didn't lie. Then came the sponsors. Then came the TV networks. Then came the investors. When something starts making money, people start treating it seriously. And the WNBA wasn't just making money, it was generating a new market, one that had been ignored for too long. Cities hosting WNBA games began seeing real economic boosts. Local businesses, restaurants, hotels, stores, parking lots began reporting surges on game nights. Media outlets realized they had been missing out on clicks, views, and engagement. So they doubled down. They started covering games, interviewing players, analyzing plays, debating controversies. The WNBA effect turned the league into a legitimate business power. But the impact wasn't only financial. It was emotional, cultural, human. Here's where the WNBA effect really took off. The culture shift. People started caring in ways they hadn't before. Sports fans, entertainment fans, even people who usually stayed away from sports suddenly found themselves invested. Why? Because the WNBA stopped being treated like a small league and started being treated like a world of stories. And stories are what people fall in love with. You had rivalries that felt cinematic. Clark versus Reese, Aces versus Liberty, Young stars versus established veterans. Teams trying to build dynasties. Personalities clashing. Trash talk going viral. Fans taking sides. Debates exploding online. Social media became the gasoline. TikTok edits, Twitter arguments, Instagram highlights, podcast debates. Every platform amplified the league. Suddenly, WNBA players weren't athletes. They were characters, big personalities, cultural icons. People followed them like celebrities. Kids dressed as them for Halloween. Fans waited after games for hours just to meet them. Their interviews went viral. Their comments were quoted everywhere. The WNBA Effect gave women athletes something they'd been denied for decades. A spotlight big enough to show who they really are. But while fans were celebrating, something even more powerful was happening in the background, something that would define the next 10 years. The WNBA Effect didn't just inspire fans, it inspired girls. Before, many young girls dreamed about basketball without fully believing there was a real future in it. They had role models, yes, but the visibility wasn't strong enough. Games weren't always on TV. Highlights weren't viral. Merchandise wasn't everywhere. Now, everything changed. Girls saw athletes who looked like them on the biggest sports pages. They saw interviews, rivalries, drama, excitement. They saw sold-out arenas full of energy. They saw women being celebrated for their talent, not overlooked. Youth programs saw sign-ups skyrocket. Parents reported their daughters were suddenly obsessed with basketball. Coaches noticed new confidence in young players. Schools began investing more into girls' sports. Basketball camps that used to have open spots now had wait lists. The WNBA Effect didn't just elevate the present, it elevated the future. And the athletes these girls become, they will be stronger, faster, more skilled, more confident, and more visible than any generation before them. But the effect wasn't confined to basketball. Far from it. What happened in the WNBA spilled into almost every other women's sport like a chain reaction. Women's soccer attendance surged. Women's volleyball started filling entire arenas. Women's college gymnastics became a national obsession. Women's tennis continued to thrive. Even niche sports saw viewership spikes. People who entered sports through the WNBA Effect suddenly realized something. Women's sports weren't less exciting. They were simply underpromoted. The WNBA acted like a gateway. Fans came for the hype of Clark or Reese, then ended up watching soccer highlights. Fans came for Las Vegas versus New York, then ended up checking out women's volleyball. The entire ecosystem grew together. For the first time ever, women's sports weren't being treated as an afterthought. They became a full category, an industry, something worthy of real investment. But, like every revolution, this one faced resistance. The WNBA Effect brought success, but it also brought conflict. Suddenly, the league had critics. Some were loud, some were bitter, some were uncomfortable with the shift in attention. And some simply didn't understand why women's sports were growing so fast. Arguments erupted online. Why do they get so much coverage? They're not as good as the men. Is this just hype? Are they overpromoted? And of course, the biggest cultural tension came from the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese situation. Not the rivalry, but the reaction to the rivalry. Fans argued over double standards. Commentators debated fairness. Cultural lines were drawn. People revealed biases, some subtle, some not subtle at all. Even pay became a hot topic. Critics started shouting about salaries. Supporters argued for better compensation. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. But here's the thing. Controversy is a sign of relevance. People don't argue about things they don't care about. The fact that the WNBA sparked debates, emotions, and national conversations proved something. The league had become culturally important, which brings us to the final point, the future. Because the WNBA Effect isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. The next phase of the WNBA Effect is going to reshape the sports world even more. Here's what's coming. Higher salaries. With record viewership and new media deals, player salaries will rise drastically in upcoming years. Expansion teams. New cities are already fighting to get WNBA franchises. Markets like Toronto, Nashville, Oakland, and Philadelphia are ready. Bigger media rights deals. The next broadcasting contract will multiply revenue and exposure. Superstar pipelines. College basketball is stacked with talent. Each draft will bring new celebrities into the league. Brand expansion players will become bigger influencers, global faces of sneaker brands, fashion lines, commercials. International growth basketball is global. The WNBA will start tapping deeper into Europe, Asia, and Africa. A cultural reset. Young boys will grow up respecting women's sports the same way they respect men's sports. And that, right there, is the real WNBA effect. It changes how a generation sees women in sports. It changes what's normal. It proves that women's sports are not a niche. They're the future. So what does the WNBA effect truly mean? It means women's sports will never be the same again. It means athletes are being seen, appreciated, and celebrated. It means young girls finally have visible heroes. It means fans are invested in rivalries, storylines, drama, and personality. It means money, attention, and loyalty are flowing into leagues that were ignored for too long. It means the world is beginning to give women athletes the respect they always deserved. The WNBA effect isn't a trend. It isn't a fluke. And it definitely isn't fading. It's a movement, a shift, a rebirth of women's sports. And the craziest part, we're still in the beginning. What comes next could change everything. Now I want to know, which part of the WNBA effect surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments.